Thank you for downloading this Brum Radio podcast. For more podcasts, visit brumradio.com.
And now, for your listening pleasure, it's the Brum Picture Show, brought to you by Brum Radio.
Hello, and welcome to the Brum Picture Show, the weekly film show brought to you by Birmingham-based community cinema collective Screen B14. On this week's show, we're feeling groovy, baby. Despite the world falling apart around us, rioting on the streets as we as a society soil our collective sheets, we here in the Birmingham community cinema scene are determined to have a summer of love. So, in order to try to cheer everyone up during these harrowing times, Screen B14 thought it would be a great idea to team up with the Mockingbird Cinema to screen Gaspar Noé's psychedelic existential nightmare, Enter the Void. So that should help people take their minds off things. So to celebrate this hallucinatory screening, we thought we'd talk about psychedelic films on this week's show. So tune in, turn on, but don't drop out, kids. Stay in school, okay? Now, those who were listening last week will remember that the Brum Picture Show's grooviest presenter, Nadine O'Mahony, went on a little trip of her own as she was whisked away by a tornado to the land of Oz. But I'm delighted to say that despite the best efforts of her cat Meow to thwart her progress, she has somehow managed to find her way back to the studio. So how was Oz, Nadine?
It was quite a psychedelic experience, I'd say. There were colours that I don't think I've ever seen before. I do have a statement that I'd like to read, though.
Okay.
Inspired by Rory's statement in the last episode, if you'd let me.
Yes, it seems everyone's making statements recently on the show. All right, go on.
There's been a lot of rumours online about certain incidents that happened whilst I was in the land of Oz. I'd just like to say that my house fell on that elderly lady completely by accident. It was an act of God. How her glittery red shoes got onto my feet, I can't explain. Nor could I take them off for, the whole of my trip in the land of Oz. I'd also like to say that there was a second elderly lady that died whilst I was in Oz.
Oh my goodness.
Again, that was not my fault. Meow accidentally knocked some water on her, and apparently she had a deathly allergic reaction to water. Again, that wasn't my fault. That was an accident caused by a cat, and cats can't be prosecuted as far as I'm aware. So
not yet.
Yeah, so the fact that they were related is just a really strange coincidence.
Okay. Well, it is a delight to have you back, Nadine. Now, Nadine, I'm sure you've been thinking, who's this strange, hairy, hippie-looking type sitting next to me? Well, I don't blame you for not remembering. It's been a while since you two have been in the same room together, but it's your old friend and co-presenter, Rory.
Oh!
You remember Rory?
Yeah.
This guy.
That guy, yeah. So say hi, Rory. Remind Nadine of who you are.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Rory.
Pleased to meet you.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm delighted to have the three of us back together again, even though you barely seem to remember each other.
Yeah.
Don't you?
I think it would be fun.
Yeah, I hope so. So anyway, as always, it's time for the news section. Anyone seen any news recently that has caught their eye in the movie world?
I've got some local news. Film news.
Go on.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
There's a film that's currently being filmed called Beyond of the Dead. It's a zombie film with heavy metal rockers focusing on an ABBA tribute band. You're going to be part of it, aren't you?
Apparently.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I'm going to be Bjorn from ABBA.
Okay.
No, he's going to be a zombie. He's going to be a zombie. Nadine, I asked you if you wanted to be a zombie, and you said, I am a zombie.
So yes, how do you know about this, Rory? Why are you bringing this to the table?
Well, I'm bringing this to the table because they're desperate for zombies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this is actually a recruitment campaign.
Oh, this is actually a call out. Okay.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
obviously this is going to be released this Saturday coming.
Yeah.
But if you manage to listen to the show and you do want to be a zombie, I've got some details.
Go on.
So it's general sort of essay work.
Supporting artists.
Yeah, supporting artist work.
I was going to say, why do zombies don't write essays?
No, that's nice. They can't. They're already dead. And it's casual, everyday clothes.
Yeah.
Sort of like rock download festival.
Okay.
I don't have any clothes like that.
Well, which is it? Is it casual everyday clothes or is it rock download festival clothes?
Well, if you
Make your mind up.
If your casual everyday clothes is dressing like you're going to download,
Right, okay.
then that's what you need to wear. So that means denim, leather, t-shirts.
Leather
shirts.
t-shirts?
Yeah. Itchy.
Not sure about
No
this.
logos or brands.
No. But download people love logos and brands.
Yeah.
tough.
And it's it's called Beyond, featuring Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden.
Oh, he's
I
actually
thought-
in it.
I
Yeah, I
thought you
think
meant
so.
the cheapest chips guy.
Who's that guy?
The
Antiques
guy.
Bargain Hunt.
Yeah.
That's another Dickinson, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, sadly, if you're a fan of Bargain Hunt, it's the wrong Dickinson.
Oh.
The wrong Dickinson.
But yeah, they're looking for zombies. If you are interested in becoming a zombie, please message Claudia on
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. If you're listening to the repeat of this show, that is irrelevant and none of this is of any use to you whatsoever. Just ignore everything Rory's just said because you've missed your chance to be a zombie.
Don't come to us as a zombie in Wolverhampton. People will be scared.
Yeah, did we mention it's in Wolverhampton?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think that's the first sort of recruitment drive we've actually done on this
Yeah.
show, so I feel pretty proud of that.
I mean, I'd say that's barely news. That's more advertising for...
Yeah, well, the news is there's a film coming.
The news is there's a film coming.
Yeah.
And it's called Beyond of the Dead, and it's shooting in Wolverhampton right now, and they're recruiting for zombies.
Yeah.
And it stars Bargain Hunt Man,
No.
Bruce Dickinson.
Bruce
from
Dickinson,
Iron Maiden,
right? And it was,
who I hear is a band.
yes, I've heard that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, and the film was written by his son.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that is right.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, that's cool. Yeah. Anything else?
Deadpool and Wolverine have grossed over $97 million
My goodness.
already. Hasn't even been out that long.
Wow.
And Longlegs will outrun Furiosa.
Yeah, that's some interesting news, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Poor Furiosa.
But, it's good news for the box office.
Yeah.
And I think, like we said previously, $1 billion movie used to be like a rare thing, like a unicorn. And now we're complaining that we don't have enough of them.
Yeah.
But I reckon, Deadpool and Wolverine could be our next $1 billion movie.
Yeah. And then,
So it has been an interesting year, though.
Yeah.
A lot of smaller movies. Challenges has done very well. Longlegs has done very well.
yeah, but bafflingly so.
Yeah.
Power of marketing, for sure.
Exactly.
But what else have we got coming up in the year that could break $1 billion? Is this the box office's only chance this year, do you think? Deadpool and Wolverine?
Gladiator 2, potentially.
Oh,
yeah.
that could bring them in, definitely. Yeah. And
Wicked,
that's sure, yeah.
possibly.
Yeah, surely that seems like the kind
I
of
think
film
it'll
that would
do
do
well.
$1 billion. Surely
Possibly.
people like that kind of thing.
I don't know. We've gone through the popularity of musicals now, though, haven't we?
Wow.
You think it's over?
Maybe.
Since we did the musical episode, that's
Yeah.
it. No
Don't
one
tell
cares.
Don't tell Joaquin Phoenix and Todd Phillips, is it?
Oh yeah, when's
Because
Joker 2 coming out? That'll
Joker
surely
2 is
make
coming
$5
out.
billion.
And that's a musical.
Oh, yeah.
That's got to be guaranteed billions.
Yeah.
Surely. Lady Gaga's in it.
Lady Gaga. It's true. Yeah, Joker 2, that's going to be the one, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, interestingly, they had a running joke, Joaquin Phoenix and Todd Phillips, that the sequel would be Joker in space. According to an interview with Empire magazine. Apparently, Joaquin had mocked up a bunch of posters for like Rosemary's Baby and The Godfather, but with Joker in them.
Really?
Yeah, just because they wanted to switch lanes, they wanted to put Joker in another genre. So they were coming up with all these kind of spitballing ideas, but unfortunately, we got Joker the musical, and not Joker in space.
Right. So that'll be the third one, maybe.
Yeah, possibly.
Joker in space. I think I read somewhere that they're never intending to turn him into the villain that he is, the super villain that he is in the Batman films, or link it towards Batman. So you do wonder, what is it? It's just an original character, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I think what they've done is kind of like what Ty West's doing with Maxine. And they're just using this IP as an excuse to do whatever they want. Yeah. Which is quite smart, really.
Yeah.
It's like, I've always wanted to do a musical. Nobody wants to bankroll that. Oh, Joker's in it. Played by Joaquin Phoenix. Lady Gaga's in it. Oh, now we've got our musical.
Yeah, millions and millions of dollars. Well, there we go. I mean, of course, I'm dreading it, but I will have to see it out of professionalism. Speaking of IP, something that amazed me when I saw this news, Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter are going to be reuniting, not for Bill and Ted 4, but for a Broadway production of Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. Did you hear about this?
Of course.
Yeah. I'm just amazed by this, and I can't wait to, well, at least go to a live theatre broadcast of it at the cinema, because it's Bill and Ted, but doing Waiting for Godot. So
where is it being? Is it the West End or
Broadway?
Okay.
Broadway. With a theatre to be announced, but apparently Jamie Lloyd is going to be directing. And I'll be honest, I don't really know theatre, but he's apparently one of these theatre people. Jamie Lloyd.
He looks like a right geezer.
He looks like an East End thug. If you Google him, Jamie Lloyd, he looks like the last person you'd expect to be directing an existential play. But he's on board to do it, apparently. So yeah, that's mad, isn't it?
Well, you say that, but early in his career, Keanu Reeves got very good notices for his Hamlet.
Oh, really? Yes.
With one reviewer saying he was Hamlet.
To be or not to be. So, yeah, and apparently Alex Winter is no stranger to Broadway. So he appeared in the 1979 production of Peter Pan, playing John Darling, opposite Sandy Duncan, and also he starred in The King and I. So that's good, isn't it? Well, starred. He was in it.
Well, Jamie Lloyd's also doing The Tempest and Much Ado About Nothing with Sigourney Weaver and Tom Hiddleston and Hayley Atwell. He's getting all the celebs in.
Wow.
I do find Waiting for Godot seems to be one of those plays that just is always on, and there's always like a big film star, on playing it. Because I know Ben Whishaw, I think, is playing Waiting for Godot at the West End of them.
Ben Whishaw.
Whishaw, yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
And I know Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart did it as well.
I mean, that I can see.
Yeah.
That makes more sense than Bill and Ted. But hey, they're both good actors, aren't they?
Keanu and Alex to you.
Keanu and Alex, sorry. Well, I think Mr. Reeves and Mr. Winters. But yeah, I'm really intrigued to see what that's going to be. Who else would we like to see do Waiting for Godot?
Werner Herzog.
Werner Herzog and Bjorn.
Bjorn, where is Godot? We've been waiting for so long now.
Oh yeah. I don't know where Godot is. Mamma mia.
Bjorn, could you sing me some more of the ABBA songs whilst we wait for Godot?
You can dance.
Yes, I like that one.
I think you like it a bit too much, Werner.
No, it is not possible to like your songs so much, your discography. It is so pleasing to my ears.
I don't want any of your meat, Werner.
End scene. I have the feeling that could have gone on indefinitely, perhaps until Godot arrived.
You are listening to the Brum Picture Show on Brum Radio, and on this week's show, we are trying to manifest a summer of love by talking about psychedelic films to delight your third eyes. So yes, as always, we need to define our terms here. What is a psychedelic film? And I suppose, just like hallucinogenic visions, it's open to interpretation. So psychedelic film, it doesn't just include films that explicitly about taking recreational drugs, such as Roger Corman's The Trip from 1967, which was written by Jack Nicholson, of all people, and is basically just about Peter Fonda taking some acid. So yeah, this film was very much part of the counterculture movement, and where most people think about psychedelia, they think about, the 1960s and basically the popularization of LSD in Western society. But yeah, so in the 60s, with this explosion in psychedelia and psychedelic art and music and everything, we just wound up with loads of films. So we got films like Daisies and Easy Rider and The Trip, as I mentioned, and even 2001 A Space Odyssey is often considered a psychedelic film. So they don't necessarily all show drug taking, but they certainly replicate the psychedelic experience, these films. But whilst we think of the 60s as the birth of psychedelia, it definitely goes way back before that. And there are plenty of films from early cinema that we count as psychedelic. So even way back in 1902, we've got Georges Méliès's The Trip to the Moon, or Le Voyage dans la Lune, with its iconic anthropomorphized moon face. And then even things like Fritz Lang's Metropolis could be described as psychedelic. And then you've got stuff like Un Chien Andalou and Maya Deren's Meshes of the Afternoon in 1943, which was a huge influence on David Lynch. And of course, we see some of the scariest psychedelic trips possible in early animation. So we've got Fantasia and Dumbo, some nightmare fuel in those films. So it's not just the 60s, even though that's definitely where it exploded. So some people kind of argue that the counterculture movement died a bit of a death at the end of the 60s, and a lot of people put the Manson family and the Tate murders as kind of the moment that the innocence of the 60s died. But psychedelia still carried on into the 70s and onwards. So we've got Jodorowsky with films like El Topo and Holy Mountain, and they're often cited as tentpoles of the movement, and they're often described as acid westerns. And if you've got to check those films out if you haven't. And then of course, as we get into the 80s and onwards, we've got David Cronenberg with stuff like Videodrome and Naked Lunch, all exploring the nature of reality and humanity. But yeah, as we say, it's a broad definition, and lots of people consider Christopher Nolan's Inception a psychedelic film with exploration of dreams and whatnot. And then, of course, in the modern era, we've got people like Gaspar Noé, and one of my favourites working today is Quentin Dupieux, who is also known as Flat Eric. Sorry, Mr. Wazzo had a song, Flat Eric. Yes, that orange puppet from the 90s. He now makes
the puppet.
Well, no, he's friends with the puppet.
Okay.
But yeah, and he's one of the greatest surrealist directors working today. One of his films is called Rubber, which is about a sentient runaway tire, which goes on a killing spree. So yeah, it's still very much going strong, and it's in a way, it's up to you what's psychedelic, really. So, it describes the out of the ordinary, the dreamlike, the colourful, the surreal, even the macabre. It's about the exploration of the self, our place as a species in the universe. And essentially, it's about exploring reality from a new perspective. Or it could just be something that looks really good under the influence. Big emphasis on colours and shapes. But ultimately, it's a vibe, man. So yeah, guys, you into your psychedelia?
Yeah, man. Yeah, totally. No, I actually, to be honest, I've never taken any psychedelics.
Nor have any of us.
No.
But I really like psychedelic art. Like, I like psychedelic music, and I like psychedelic films. I like trippy films, because if you watch psychedelic films, kids, you don't have to take drugs. You can go on a trip from your living room perfectly safely. But it's interesting, and it's weird that, even Barbie has been influenced by psychedelia. Jodorowsky, is that how you pronounce it? So there's Holy Mountain references in Greta Gerwig's Barbie, if you look hard enough. So it's definitely been, hugely culturally influential. And I love Mijalo films, and there's a lot of weird psychedelic dream sequences in them. So, films like Suspiria and All the Colours of the Dark.
Yeah, absolutely. Rory, yes.
Not as much of a fan,
Oh.
I think, as you guys.
Oh.
Psychedelic films. I think my problem with it is, it's what your definition is. That seems to include so many different films.
It's anything that's a bit trippy.
Yeah. Or anything that sort of aims to explore the sort of the workings of the mind. Which, there's some to think of Inception as a psychedelic film, I don't think it is, because it hasn't got that sort of counterculture. It's more of a mainstream type film. But I think my problem with psychedelic films that are specifically sort of marketed as psychedelic is that you can't enjoy them when you're sober.
Well, I don't know.
I enjoy it. Well, what about 2001?
Yeah.
It's very psychedelic, isn't it?
It is. Do you not enjoy that?
Well, it's more of a critique of, I'm not saying all films are like that, but I'll talk about Enter the Void in a minute, but there was long sections of just pretty colours. Fly things. It's red and then it's blue and then it's purple. And if you're just there, just having a coffee, although
to be fair, we'll get onto this. Also, Enter the Void is one of the worst films that you could watch on psychedelic drugs.
True, yeah.
Send you on a bad trip.
Yeah, why'd you do that to yourself?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Better off watching Avatar or something.
Yeah. But that is probably a good time for Rory's choice of film, because I believe you are going to talk about Enter the Void.
Yeah, so now I watched Enter the Void.
Yeah.
I watched it on a summer's afternoon, completely sober.
Commitment to the show, that is, doing his research on a lovely day.
Yeah, it was a beautiful day.
Yeah.
And at times I was thinking, what am I doing?
Why? It's this stupid show.
Yeah. I can imagine if you're watching it in a very dark room on a big screen, I think you'd have a better experience. I think it looks... At times, it looks amazing, and Gaspar Noé, he does create a really interesting atmosphere, sort of neon Tokyo, really, and it's something I haven't seen before. And he uses sort of this point of view shot throughout, only until, and this isn't a spoiler because I think it happens early on. The main character dies, and then the point of view sort of transcends him, and it sort of represents a spirit, and then suddenly you're sort of following the camera in this sort of vast landscape.
Yeah, and for some reason his spirit's first instinct is to watch his sister get up to some very mischievous activity. Yeah,
which again is something else I have issue with.
Yes.
But I think so. If you're in the cinema, maybe if you've taken something, I think you would really enjoy it. If you haven't, maybe you still would enjoy it.
Or, as we said, you might have a horrible time if you've taken something.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Don't do drugs, kids.
But the other problem I have is I get vertigo.
Right.
Yeah, I get it. It's like an inner ear thing. So I get it sometimes when coming out the sea. And I also means I get seasick quite a lot.
Do you come out the sea often?
Yeah. It's weirdly when I don't even go in the sea, I just come out.
You're like Godzilla.
But spinning around.
Yeah.
And I found I was every so often I'd get a bit of vertigo while watching it. So that wasn't on the rating.
That sounds great. It's like a real trick.
Yeah, it said sort of graphic, sort of sex, violence, sort of profanities, drug use, but nothing about vertigo.
Right.
So if you do experience vertigo, just be warned. Take some anti-sickness tablets beforehand, maybe. That's the drug you should take before watching this film.
I mean, that sounds like, if you're coming out of the sea, it sounds like you've got water in your ear. That's obviously it's because it's an inner ear problem, isn't it? Vertigo.
Yeah, but I didn't have water in my ear when... Oh, actually, I did come out of the shower just before.
So you should just stay away from water.
Do you think it's water?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah. That's in my medical opinion.
Oh, okay, so don't put water in your ear before watching this film then.
Yeah, or do.
That sounds like fun to me. It's like 4DX experience.
Yeah,
exactly.
But I think my problem is it looked great, but there was a coldness to the film. I couldn't invest in the characters for me, really. There lacked an emotion really to the film, which was strange because you were so close to everything, yet I felt quite emotionally distant. There is one amazing scene, which is terrifying, which is, I think, a car crash scene. And I've never seen anything like that before. But I think the reason why that is so sort of visceral is because it's kids in a car in an accident, which you could argue then is potentially, I don't know, exploitative, because that's the reason why you're feeling anything during that scene, because you're using kids in it. And yeah, I think if you're a cinephile, you could enjoy the film. But maybe I'm seeing something that other people aren't seeing. Maybe I'm not taking something that other people are taking. But I didn't massively connect to it, although it looked very impressive.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't think of many Gaspar Noé films that you massively connect with. Like, I don't know, all of his films are kind of sensory assaults, aren't they?
Yeah.
And especially, like, I like Enter the Void, and you should definitely go to our screening of Enter the Void.
Monday the 12th at the Mockingbird Cinema.
Absolutely. But I will say, I do find it quite sophomoric in a way, in that it's so, with the way that it talks about psychedelia and because basically the film starts with someone smoking DMT, and basically it's just got this friend who just explains to him, it's just like, oh, I've been reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and this is what happens when you die, man. And it's so like, it is like a college philosophy major kind of explaining drugs to you, and I think that's where it kind of falls down a lot. I wish it didn't have the sequences of dialogue that just kind of go, oh, this is what we're exploring.
The dialogue was really naff. Definitely.
Yeah, really bad.
And I think that's a good point, in that you've got, I guess, sort of Buddhism as a sort of reincarnation as the philosophy within the film. But again, it's a very sort of surface level Wikipedia entry version of it. And without the sort of the emotion, the emotional impact of what it actually means to sort of reincarnate, and also just how important that philosophy is, and that sort of ethical beliefs or that religious belief system is for all those people. It doesn't hit to the heart of the issue at all.
Yeah. The thing is, I watched Enter the Void in my like early 20s, and I thought, yeah, this is so deep, so clever. And then I watched it like a year or two ago, and I was like,
please come and watch Enter the Void.
Please come and watch it. No, but yeah, it is a cinematic experience.
That's what I'm selling.
It's got experience it in the cinema is what
it's incredible.
These guys are trying to say.
In terms of just an experience, like, it is just, you can't fault it for that, in that it's just got some mad stuff in it, and the soundtrack is just intense, and it is just full on in so many ways, and it's colourful, and it's bonkers and all of that, and it has one of the best opening credit sequences I've ever seen, because it instantly just hits you over the head with strobe lights and colours and block capitals just going like that.
And
maybe don't watch if you suffer from epilepsy.
Yes. I'd be annoyed if I was on the crew.
Yeah.
Like, there's me. There it is.
Exactly.
Rewind.
Exactly.
Oh, I missed it again.
But yes, please do come to see Enter the Void, because whilst we have our criticisms, it is a film to see at the cinema for sure.
Ooh, a sugar cube. Don't mind if I do. Ooh, that tastes a bit weird. Oh no. What's happening? I feel funny. I feel funny. Help me. I can see through time. I am a golden god. More than a blood bag. I am the Lizard King.
You are listening to the Brum Picture Show on Brum Radio. Unfortunately, Rory has abandoned us, but thankfully I am still joined by Nadine O'Mahony. And yes, Nadine, I believe you are going to share with me a psychedelic film that you would like to recommend to our listeners. I'm really intrigued. You've been very cagey about what film you're going to talk about, so I can only imagine.
Well, you're wrong, Paul.
Oh.
I'm not going to share a psychedelic film.
Oh.
I'm going to share two.
What?
But one of them doesn't exist.
What is this, Goncharov again?
But that feels very fitting
Yeah.
for a psychedelic episode because what does exist? What is real?
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
No, basically, they're both films by legendary French director Clouzot. One of them, which was never completed, but the other one, which was, but using much of the lessons learned from the test footage of the first film. So those films are L'Enfant, that's my best French accent, or Inferno in English, and the second one is La Prisonnière, or Woman in Chains. Henri-Georges Clouzot, a titan of French cinema, but he was getting a bit long in the tooth. The Nouvelle Vague were up on the scene. They didn't like his methods, He storyboarded things and wrote everything into the script, and they felt that everything should be improvised and, more spontaneous. And so he had something to prove that he could make a new type of cinema. So he wanted to really reinvent cinematic language, which is quite a task, I think, for anybody. But he was up to the challenge. I think he'd been influenced as well by 8½, which was a huge film by Italian film director Fellini, very influential. And he wanted to go even further. And this was his first time experimenting with colour as well, because all of his previous films had been in black and white. This film, he planned to shoot the majority of the scenes in black and white, or the normal scenes in black and white. And then there were these kind of psychotic fantasy dream sequences that would be in colour. Not just ordinary colour, though. He had to do all of these experiments because he wanted to reverse the colours. So, for instance, there's a scene where the star Romy Schneider is water skiing on a lake, and the water turns from blue to red. Something you could do quite easily these days with colour grading, but in those days it was quite complicated. So there's loads and loads of colour tests. Romy Schneider's wearing grey makeup and blue lipstick, and they're like reversing the colours in post. And just, he kind of got bogged down with the camera tests, and it was unusual for a French film at that time. They didn't do so many tests, maybe just with the wardrobe, but he basically was being bankrolled by Columbia Pictures. They saw some of the test footage and they gave him an unlimited budget, which is just not a good thing for an artist, because he let his imagination run wild. And so he just spent months, I think, just filming these test footage, films of Romy Schneider pouring alcohol into a glass, of playing with a slinky, of doing all these mad things. Now, some of these experiments you can watch, on YouTube, and there's also a documentary called Inferno, which sort of pieces together some of the experimental footage. The director of that actually was trapped in a lift with Clouzot's wife. And she happened to have all these reels of old film, all these experiments and things. But the film it depicts the extreme jealousy of Hotelier Marcel, played by Serge Reggiani, and his much younger, attractive wife, Romy Schneider. And so his psychotic, jealous fantasies are these kind of psychedelic, eye-popping sort of fever dream sequences. Now, unfortunately, despite having 3 crews, 150 technicians, and a limited budget by Columbia Pictures, the film was beset with difficulties. He would just keep refilming things again and again. He was a perfectionist. I think he had anxiety. He was an insomniac. He was waking people up at 2 a.m. to tell him about his ideas. The lake they were filming on was getting drained.
Oh dear.
So they had a very, definite time period where they had to finish. And he just kept, the 3 film crews were working at the same time, and he would just, the idea was like, he'd go to one, get them going, go to the next one. And he'd just go to the first one and just keep going with that one. And the rest of the crew didn't know what the heck they were doing. He exhausted the actors. He made them run again and again and again and again, until one of them basically just had it had enough with him and just left. The main actor basically just was like, I can't do this anymore, and said he was not well. Clouseau said he'd sue, and the guy didn't care because he was shouting at them. They were shouting at him. It was quite, chaotic. It all came to a head when he shot this quite saucy scene with two the young female actresses on a boat.
Yes.
And they were kissing each other. And he had a heart attack.
You would, wouldn't you?
Yeah, so and that was it. And to be honest, it seemed like everybody was quite relieved.
Oh, no. He died?
No,
Oh, okay,
he
right.
lived.
He lived.
But I think, and obviously,
Hampered production a bit.
yeah, people were just like, it couldn't have carried on much longer.
Right.
He'd lost his star. He tried to get a replacement, but that didn't last. They didn't even get to shoot anything. Nobody knew what he was doing. He was filming stuff that wasn't in the script.
Yeah.
It was kind of heading for disaster. But there's loads of these beautiful clips from Inferno. I mean, it's an astoundingly, exquisitely beautiful film, or it would have been had it ever been completed. These amazing sort of time-lapse sequences, slow motion sequences, backward sequences, colour experiments.
It does sound psychedelic.
Oh, it's so psychedelic, baby. And but no, like you could just piece them together and put some music behind it and, have a nice time. But like I said, that film was never completed, but he went on to create another film a few years later, La Prisonnière, and we get this really psychedelic fever dream sequence. It's the actual climax of the film. And you can see many of the ideas in that are taken directly from Inferno. Many of the experiments with colour. He and his cinematographer, Andreas Winding, invented this really interesting, I think it was a circular board with multiple light bulbs on it that they span around, which created this really interesting effect, which you might have seen in some music videos. I know Last Night in Soho employed this in one of the scenes. So it's the scene, the close up with all the colours spinning around her face. But yeah, it's a different story. This one is about a woman sort of caught in a love triangle between an artist and a gallery owner. Both men are quite domineering, and there's definitely this kind of intense sexuality to it, but you don't really see anything. It's all in the imagination. And so a lot of this is kind of abstracted. There's use of colour, use of editing, use of sound. Yeah, it's just really interesting filmmaking. And I wish he had lived a little bit longer and made more films like this, because it would have been, really exciting to see where he was going. I think maybe he was a little bit ahead of his time with this film, but I think you've got to watch it, especially for that climactic sequence at the end. But it's exciting to see what he might have done if he had actually finished Inferno.
Well, I must say, I'm not familiar with those films, what you have mentioned, but they sound very good and psychedelic indeed. So, yeah, I'll be sure to check that out. Well, now it's time for me to talk about a film, and I must admit that most of my favourite psychedelic films I've already spoken about on this show, so I don't know what that says about me. So there's films like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Midsommar, A Field in England, of course, but it seemed appropriate to talk about a David Lynch film. My darling David Lynch. Of course, he needs some love at the moment, so yeah, it's time, because I always talk about David Lynch on this show, and I haven't actually chosen one of his films to talk about in the main topic. I know. So it's about time that I do, and I am going to talk, of course, about Eraserhead. Now, admittedly, Eraserhead is probably the last film that anyone should watch under the influence of psychedelic drugs. It's pretty traumatizing to watch sober, to be honest. But yeah, to me, it encapsulates what psychedelic cinema is, because it plays with narrative, it plays with form, and it wildly experiments with visuals and sound design in a frankly astonishingly radical way. It is incredible. So it was shot over 5 years whilst Lynch was studying at the American Film Institute, and they funded it. And initially, because it was a 20-page script, they thought naturally a page a minute is industry standard for scripts, so they thought it was going to be a 20-minute film, but of course not. It was a 90-minute film, and they kept running out of money, and that's why it took 5 years to make. And David Lynch was doing a paper round at the time of making it, and the American Film Institute, they let him basically use the campus as his set. So he converted these stables, and he wound up living on set for a while. But it just took forever. So there's actually a scene where the main character, played by Jack Nance, he walks through a door. Yeah. So the shot of the door opening and him entering the door, there's 18 months in between those shots, but they match. And Jack Nance, who has this crazy hairdo, anyone that's seen the Eraserhead cover will know that hairstyle. He had to keep that hairstyle for 5 years. And
amazing.
Yeah, and
they didn't have wigs.
No, they didn't exist. They hadn't invented them. His wife apparently was in charge of maintaining his hair, and it ultimately led to their divorce. But they remained friends afterwards, so it's not all sad. But yeah, apparently it took a lot of work doing that hair. There's a lot of picking and a lot of maintenance. Anyway, it follows Jack Nance, and he lives in this industrial wasteland, and he is about to embark on the journey of fatherhood. So he accidentally gets his girlfriend pregnant, and then they find out that the baby is going to be deformed, and it is. And of course, they wind up having this strange kind of alien baby for a child, and it's one of the most disturbing things ever, and David Lynch has never revealed how they made it. So people say it might be a rabbit, some people say it's a lamb or a calf, but it's too fleshy and realistic to be not a real cadaver of something. But David Lynch has been very cryptic about what it is. He just says, it was born nearby, or maybe it was found. And apparently after completing the film, Lynch reportedly buried the embalmed whatever it is in an undisclosed location, and they had a mock wake for it at the wrap party. So it's mad to think that the baby from Eraserhead is just buried somewhere.
I imagine it's been eaten by now.
Well, it was embalmed, so I don't know. It could still be there. But anyway, so Jack Nance is left to deal with this mutant baby. And it is incredible, because people often describe David Lynch as being quite obtuse when it comes to the meaning behind his films, and notoriously, when asked to explain his films, he will often go, no. But to be honest, Eraserhead is one of his most straightforward films. It is quite blatantly about the anxiety of parenthood. There's not actually that much. I mean, it's weird, don't get me wrong, it's weird, but it is, of all of his films, I'd say it was the most obvious what it's actually about, because it is about a man having a baby and freaking out about it, because the film was conceived after Jennifer Lynch, David Lynch's daughter, was born, and she was apparently born with clubbed feet, which required extensive surgery. So this is kind of what influenced this, deformed baby. And even apparently some of the noises of the Eraserhead baby are actually Jennifer Lynch. So it's just really interesting that he's just making this kind of nightmare about fatherhood and then still using his own child as part of it. So this is actually, it's quite clear what it's about, really, and there is a clear story, and that's why I prefer David Lynch's stuff to people like Jodorowsky, in that it's not entirely abstract. There is actually more. There's more of a clear story in David Lynch's films than people like to make out. But yeah, in terms of exploring the human psyche in an abstract way, it's I just think it's an unparalleled film, and it's just amazing that he managed to channel his own fear of fatherhood into such a masterpiece. And he absolutely calls it his most spiritual film, but of course would not elaborate any further than that. But yeah, it's just got remarkable imagery, and most importantly, it's the sound design. I think that's what really kind of tips it over into being a full psychedelic experience. It's just meticulously well constructed, and it's got all these kind of industrial groans and just soundscapes. It just got where it just blurs the line between what is sound design and what's score. I think they spent like a year just doing the sound effects. So they created various sounds so there's a scene where a bed slowly dissolves, and for that they just put a microphone in a plastic bottle and floated it in a bathtub. But yeah, it's just, I can't go. I could talk about Eraserhead for hours and hours, but it's just it's just incredible. And of course, Stanley Kubrick, it was one of his favorite films, and Stanley Kubrick would show it to people just to kind of get them in the mood. And H.R. Giger as well, he famously designed a lot of the Alien stuff. He loved it as well, to the point that David Lynch later accused Giger of stealing his ideas for some of his stuff, and he refused to work with him on Dune, which was interesting. But yeah, it forms the groundwork of everything else that David Lynch would do afterwards. So you can see bits of Eraserhead in Twin Peaks, and especially The Return, and like it really kind of nods back to that, and it just sets up all of his little motifs and themes and everything. And but most importantly of all, it's actually, whilst it's a disturbing nightmare of a film, underneath it is a black comedy, and it is uncomfortably funny. And there's a scene where Jack Nance has dinner with his girlfriend's parents that is simultaneously hilarious and harrowing, and that is something that I think David Lynch does so well. Is he just treads that line between the disturbing and the really funny. And yeah, if you've not seen it, then you won't have seen anything like it before. It's just amazing. So I love you, David. Love you. You're listening to the Brum Picture Show on Brum Radio, and today we have been talking about psychedelic films, and appropriately enough, we're about to review a film that is kind of psychedelic in a way. It's certainly quite neon, certainly colourful. So it is I Saw the TV Glow, which is the latest offering from indie darling studio A24, and it's produced by Emma Stone and, oddly enough, Fred Durst of Limp Bizkit.
Fred Durst is in the movie.
He's in the movie.
Yeah, he's the dad.
Oh, he is. Yeah. So that's baffling. I do wonder how that came about. It stars Justice Smith and Bridget Lundy Payne as two teenage outcasts in the 90s who become obsessed with a Buffy-esque TV show called The Pink Opaque. And they say The Pink Opaque a lot in the film.
They don't quite say it like that, though.
Well,
Pink Opaque.
The Pink Opaque. And in true psychedelic fashion, the line between fantasy and reality becomes blurred, and they come to question their own identities. So Nadine, what did you think of I Saw the TV Glow?
I quite enjoyed it, you know. It's not going to be for everyone. Again, it's another one of these films that, you know, it does have a storyline, but it is basically just vibes, man.
It's just vibes.
It's vibes.
Yeah.
It's neon. It's music. It's, you know, running on nostalgia.
Yeah.
So if you want a really kind of densely plotted, you know, character study or something like that, you know, this film isn't going to appeal to you. You know, there is a sort of deeper story running through it. But I really enjoyed it for the visuals. I really enjoyed the music and the soundscapes. And I think for me, what I connected with most is this kind of, like you say, this nostalgia. So the film begins in the 90s and sort of goes on through the 2000s. And I grew up at that time. I loved TV. I was obsessed with TV. I watched Buffy, other kind of shows like Charmed and Xena are all kind of a similar vein. There was a lot of those kinds of, you know, there's a lot of those TV shows that adolescents really became obsessed with. And I had all the books and just like the characters in the film. So I could really relate to that aspect. And using media as a way to bond with other people and to sort of, you know, there was something, it made me think of autistic special interests, like the fervor that these young people in this film have about this TV show, how they're very fixated on it, and it's kind of most of their conversation revolves around this show. So I could really relate to that. I think other people online I've seen really relate to. There's a kind of, I guess, subtext of the trans experience, but I think there's a lot of universal themes as well. It's about repression. It's about not truly being yourself, masking, and I think a lot of different people will be able to relate to those feelings. But definitely for the trans community, I think a lot of people have really kind of latched onto this film. The director themselves is trans and non-binary, and so they've put a lot of their experiences into this film. I really dug it. I like I said, I enjoyed it. It's not going to be for everyone. It might be a bit too slow for some people, but hey, I love Nicholas Winding Refn. So I think a lot of people have said it has sort of, I guess it's kind of like Lynch for Gen Z.
Yeah.
It's got a kind of surreal element, and there's a weird kind of tension between like super seriousness and humor. This kind of sort of camp aspect to it, and I quite like that, but some people might find that confusing or off-putting. But just for example, they have these monsters. Anytime we cut to this TV show, it's so bizarre. There's like an ice cream man monster that is just something to behold. So I enjoyed it, but I don't think it's going to be for everybody.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one because on paper, this does sound right up my street, this film. And it looks beautiful and, all neon colors and hazy visuals. And of course, as you say, the 90s throwback stuff. And there is some lovely little touches about like another thing. They've got an episode guide for the Pink Opaque, the TV show in the film. And I'd forgotten about episode guides. That was a thing. I had like an X-Files episode guide and everything. It was just like, you used to buy books, right, in shops. And the books would tell you about what happens in the different episodes. It was great.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I loved all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of, there's like lots of references to Smashing Pumpkins and that kind of stuff. So there's a cover of Tonight, and then there's a villain in the TV show called Mr. Melancholy, who has a Georges Méliès style moon face, which of course is also a reference to the Tonight video, which also features a moon face, and of course the Smashing Pumpkins album Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. So it's got all that kind of stuff, and it's got, as you say, there's a lot of David Lynch in there, and it's got with these musical interludes that it has, and that reminded me of like Twin Peaks in the Roadhouse, where they'd have a different band come and play every week, and there's lots of guitar-y kind of music. Like the soundtrack is just gorgeous, and it's honestly one of my favorite soundtracks in ages. There's loads of beautiful shoegazy tracks and all that kind of stuff, and just lots of really haunting guitar-led angsty music, and I loved all that stuff. But for some reason, it didn't really work for me. So even though all the pieces were there, it didn't quite fit together for me. And I get that sometimes story doesn't matter, and sometimes it's okay to just wallow in a film's aesthetic. But for me, I think the problem is that it had such a strong sci-fi central concept that you feel kind of a little shortchanged that it doesn't capitalize on that good idea, because it introduces this big plot point, but it doesn't, and no spoilers, but it doesn't explore the premise as much as I hoped it would. So I kind of thought this might be more of like a psychedelic kind of Pleasantville, which is a film I'm very fond of. If you've not seen that, then check that out. But yeah, it didn't really do much with its actual story. So yeah, and I like a slow film, but I did find the pacing very frustrating, and it took a while to reveal its cards. And then when it did, they were kind of all jumbled up, and like some of them weren't even from the same deck. So yeah, wasn't too sure about that. And also the dialogue takes some getting used to. So it's a really strange combination of like mumblecore, naturalism, and Yorgos Lanthimos style awkward stilted speech, and that kind of that kind of got a bit grating. And I got to say as well, I found Justice Smith, the lead actor, quite irritating with his delivery. His delivery for a lot of it is just incomprehensible, and I don't know whether that was kind of partly the sound system where we were watching it, but it was like, it bothered me a bit. And ultimately I didn't care about any of the characters, which is a bit of a problem. So I think overall, it's like I just thought it looked gorgeous, and everything was there, but ultimately I found it quite superficial. It was all about the aesthetic, and then when you dig below the surface, there's just not really anything there. I just didn't think it was as clever or as deep as it thought it was, and I didn't think it articulated its ideas well enough for me. And it felt like a collection of influences, constructed to form a simulacra of something much cleverer. But nevertheless, I enjoyed a lot about it, but it did kind of leave me feeling cold and unsatisfied.
I think the style can be a little bit emotionally distancing, but Paul Schrader loves it.
Oh, well, if Paul Schrader loves it, then...
So do check it out.
Yeah.
I did see another film that I'm just very briefly going to talk about. So I went to see the film Dee Dee.
Oh, yeah.
It's another film set in the not so distant past. Well, it doesn't feel too distant to me. It probably was about 20 years ago. But it's set during the MySpace era, man.
Ah,
so
MySpace.
It's a coming of age. It's a lovely, funny coming of age film for the MySpace generation. It's about, a young Taiwanese boy growing up in America. The audience I was with were laughing along the whole way through. I think the only thing that I had a slight issue with is I identified so strongly with the female characters, like the mother, and this kid was a bit annoying at times. And of course he's a teenager. All teenagers make mistakes, but he kept sort of really messing things up with his friends and his family, and there were a few car crash moments. But I think it's definitely worth checking out. And again, I love that nostalgia of the recent past. There's lovely moments where he's sending messages and decides to delete them, and things like that. So if you were on MySpace, or if you wish you had been on MySpace, this is going to really work for you.
Nice. I'll be sure to check that out. Just briefly, I also went to see Deadpool and Wolverine because frankly there was nothing else on at the local multiplex, and I didn't hate it. So that's about it, really.
You could take that to the bank.
Yeah. I mean, I'd rather... My main problem with Deadpool in general is that I don't really like Ryan Reynolds or his humour. I think it's all very frat boy. But I would love to see Deadpool with Ryan Gosling instead.
Yes.
So give me a Ryan Gosling version and then we can talk. But it was nice seeing Hugh Jackman back. He was great.
And in yellow.
So there you go.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. So I enjoyed it enough. It was fine.
I enjoyed it enough.
Yeah. So that's about all we got time for on this week's show. But we just got time for Nadine's roundup of local events.
Yes. So we've been talking about it already. On the 12th at the Mockingbird Cinema, Screen B14, we'll be showing Enter the Void. And tickets are flying, guys.
Ooh.
So please get yours whilst you can. On the 15th, Palestine on Film will be showing Three Promises at Pan Pan in Digbeth. So do check that out. On the 16th, there'll be an overlap social. So if you're into your animation, your animated short films, check that out at Norton's. And on the 20th, Journey Film Club will be showing Barbie. Yes, another psychedelic film, or at least influenced, at the Birmingham LGBT Centre. On the 21st, Whatever Pays the Rent will be showing Train Spotting at the Hare and Hounds.
Very good.
So do check out their social medias and you can get your tickets there. And if you want a roundup of all the pop-up cinema events in Birmingham, do follow another _bite _ cherry on Instagram.
Yes, I've heard good things about this Instagram account, so I recommend that you follow it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nadine. Some exciting stuff happening indeed. Well, that's all we've got time for on this week's show. Do be sure to join us next time when I think I can actually announce this. We're going to be talking about aliens.
Woo!
Alien films. Now, whether that's just the Alien franchise or just aliens in general, you'll have to wait to find out. Or email us at pictureshow@brumradio.com to see which you prefer. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from me, Paul.
And it's goodbye from me, Nadine.
Goodbye.
You have been listening to The Brum Picture Show, a Screen B14 production for Brum Radio. Tune in next time for more film fun, and don't forget to email us at pictureshow@brumradio.com. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
So what I want you to do, Rory, is I want you to say,
Okay.
"Oh, a sugar cube. Don't mind if I do."
Ooh, a sugar cube. Don't mind if I do.
Oh, that tastes a bit weird.
Ooh, that tastes a bit weird.
What's happening? I feel funny.
What's happening? I feel funny.
Oh no.
Oh no. Oh.
Help!
Help!
I am more than a blood bag.
I am more than a blood bag.
I am a golden god.
I am a goldenrod god.
Help me.
Help me.
Oh,
Ooh.
I can see through time.
I can see through. This is really long.
Yeah.
Through time.
Okay, and then I just want you to go. Ah! Ah! All right, bit louder. Bit more. All right.
Okay, no, I can't do this anymore.
Okay. All right. Now, just one last thing. Last thing. I want you to say, "I am the Lizard King."
I am the Lizard King.
Cool.
I would say more exultantly, like, I am the lizard.
I know, but I think he's had enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this Brum Radio podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us on your podcast app.